apologizing. We do have a short business meeting, so bear with me, please. I have some opening comments. Mary sent a newsletter out regarding information about email, your address, and phone number, and so on. I'm going to put a sheet on one of the back tables. And before you leave, if you're a member or wish to be a member, sign the sheet, give us the information, and on it you could indicate whether you wanted to receive the email or mail newsletter in regard to that. I would encourage you, if you can, to do email. That would save the Historic Society some money.
But we don't mind mailing it.
Okay. So we'll put the sheet in the back table, and if you remember, we would appreciate that you would sign it. Reminder from Mary that the next meeting is October 10th, and that's going to be Dale Taylor, who was a former or last owner of the Sarve Shoes. I believe he's a resident of Virgil, and he'll have some interesting information to tell us about the business and what happened to it. Also a reminder, commercial, we need cookies.
I already have one person who brings cookies, so I see one other. And I mean, bought cookies or homemade, doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you. Just a note, a couple weeks ago, a class of Cortland students came to McGraw. They contacted Mary, and Mary set up the arrangements, and they were interested in seeing the Central New York Cemetery, which is located up beyond the high school. And they seemed very interested, and afterwards Mary took them over to the historic library and had a little presentation there. And she informed me tonight that some of the students are coming back and doing additional research on some of the students that attended the college at that time. So that should be very interesting to see what they find out. Also, Mary is working very hard, I guess with the school district, to put a walking trail up to the cemetery. It does need some work. It's been, I think, quite a while. They have cut some paths up there, but it could be groomed, and the cemetery itself could show some improvement. So Mary's working on that with the high school students, and I think also she's working very hard in getting markers.
And Sharon's going to help with the signage.
Okay. Okay, any other comments?
I was wondering if people here have heard other programs, historical things, that they would recommend, you know, that would special.
I think that was in the newsletter. And if you do have suggestions for programs that you might think would be of interest to our group, please let Mary know or myself know, and
I'm working on next year's now.
we would look into it. Mary is now looking into some programs for next year now. My wife and I attended a meeting in New Haven at
Glenhaven.
Glenhaven, New Haven. There's a New Haven somewhere. Glenhaven the other night, and the program was on the Little White Church on the green in Homer, and that is remarkable. And we talked about it, and Mary perhaps might try to get them for a meeting here next year. But there's so much history in that, and that was such a great presentation. It's eye-opening, really, all about that church. Okay, let's have our minutes from the last meeting, please.
Okay, we met on August 8th. Bill called the meeting to order. Cindy Craig read the secretary report, and Mary Bickford made a motion to approve. Jerry Craig seconded, and the motion carried. There was no treasurer's report. No old business. New business was a reminder of the September 12th program, which we have Chuck Imperio here tonight to tell us about Upstate New York in 100 words or less. We need volunteers for cookies for the October meeting. There was a motion to adjourn by Catherine McDonald, seconded by Sally Swisher. And then Mary introduced Chuck Jeremy, the Village of Homer historian, and he shared a PowerPoint program entitled Connecting Communities, the Portland Traction Company in Little York Park. Refreshments were served to 48 people.
Any corrections or omissions to the minutes? Stand as accepted. We have no financial report this meeting. Next meeting, there will be one. Any new business? I should say old business first, new business. Okay, I want to explain, since Chuck is only going to speak in 100 words, the meeting should be rather short. Anyway, I wanted to share some things with you that are history to me and things that I enjoy. As you know, I've been an educator for 33 years and I never got away from show and tell. So in the last few years, I really got involved in learning more about John J. McGraw, our friend from Truxton, who was a famous baseball player and manager. As a matter of fact, he managed the New York Giants for 30 years. He won 10 pennants, 3 World Series, and he was associated with tremendous ball players. And he was motherless at the age of 10. So he's pretty much on his own, growing up in Truxton. John was also known as Little Napoleon. And I say that because as a little boy growing up, any money he had, he went out and bought a rule book about baseball. He knew the rules inside and out. Matter of fact, he knew the rules better than the umpires. And he frightened them sometimes. He frightened his own ball players as they were playing for him. And he says, there's one way to do it, and it's my way. But anyway, over the years, many of you will remember the name Bernie Potter. Bernie was a farmer in Truxton, a great man. And during his last years, I got to know him pretty well because he played golf at Walden Oaks, and we talked a lot of times about baseball and other things. But I think the thing that got me originally involved into this is Carl Kimberly. We were both members of the Lions Club. And he always said, he knew I collected things like this, and he always said, I have something for you. I didn't know what it was at first, but then he explained to me. It was a program of when the New York Giants played the Truxton Giants in 1938. The thing that is amazing about this is that most of the players of the New York Giants in 1938 signed the program. And there were 2 signatures there. Carl Hubble, who was inducted into the Hall of Fame. He was a famous pitcher for the Giants. And also Mel Lott, who was the first baseman. And they're both Hall of Famers. So I'm very thankful to Mary and Carl for sharing this with me. In the meantime, knowing Bernie Potter, we talked about this, and Bernie says, you know, years and years ago, when he was a young farmer in Truxton, he bought a house, a tenant house, and they went in to clean the tenant house and get it ready for somebody else, and in the corner was an unopened cardboard box. And he explained to me that they were brand new programs. This is a program of the game that was played between the New York Giants and the Truxtun Giants in 1938. Brand new, never touched until he handed it to me. And it's very interesting with the ads and everything else in there. But the New York Giants always said they would come and play a game here. Now, John Jay died, I think, in 1933. The Giants kept their word and came here and played the game. The proceeds from that game was used for this purpose. That's the monument that you see in the road today. And it faces the direction of the John Jay Field. I think at that time, probably they raised about $2,000. Today, that thing would, you know, how much it would really cost. But Bert Kinney, who owned the hotel, was the one that really got behind John Jay and pushed him in the direction that he traveled after that. He played, first of all, he played baseball, he played professionally in Baltimore. And I think that's where he met the lady that he had married. Very wealthy person when he passed away, because the other thing he liked to do, by the way, was every year off season he'd go to Cuba. And he liked to go to the racetracks. So every year off season he would go to Cuba and be on the racetrack. But anyway, let me show you just quickly and then I'll get out of here. I brought some pictures. This is John Jay. This is part of the display that's in Cooperstown. It's a permanent display there. I enjoy that picture very much. The picture that I really enjoy is this one.
Oh, yeah.
I'll put these here. I'll leave them here if you want to take a closer look at them. That's John Jay catching a ball. This is John Jay and Hannes Wagner, who was inducted in the Hall of Fame also, played with Pittsburgh. And that's one of the cards I collected. Those are expensive baseball cards today to collect them, but it was important to me to try to get it. My wife did all the research on this. This one is another one here. John Jay and Christy Mathewson. He was a famous pitcher for the New York Giants. John Jay would always say he was the best. And he was I think he won over 300 games, which is unheard of today. If a pitcher goes 6 innings today, they're lucky. But there's another baseball card that I have received also. And this is a picture when he was a youngster, about 12 years old, with the Truxtun brass band. And he's in it because he delivered newspapers. This picture was in the Elmira Times, I believe. And Elmira Times used to be delivered in Truxtun. And he used to plow away in the wintertime in the snows, earning a few cents delivering these papers to the Truxtun farmers. So he's an interesting person. The other day, we found something on the computer, and this was an edition that was put out by the Portland Standard, January 1st, 2000. There's a tremendous article here. This whole page is on John Jay. I mean, it's really great. And you can tell I'm a baseball nut, sport nut, so I know a lot of you probably are not, but I think it's important. It's the history of a small town.
Yeah.
And a famous person has grown up around this area, and that's what I'm so happy about. The other thing, you can't see this, but this is a picture of the actual game taking place in 1938. They had about 7,000 spectators in Truxton. Now, if you can imagine 7,000 people, they brought bleachers from Cornell University and Syracuse University. Mel Ott, who I mentioned to you, he hit a home run here. Needless to say, the New York Giants won. I think the score was 6-1 or 6-2. And this is a picture, of course, of the bleachers and so on, the grandstand, which is still standing. I was telling my wife the other day, I said, one thing I would like to do, personally, I'd like to get a group of people, they don't have to be from Truxton, but to restore that field and have games played there again. I think it would be a tremendous thing in recognition of John J. McGraw Field. Amen. Thank you for allowing me to share this information with you.
Okay, I'll speak in the microphone so everybody can hear me. A few minutes ago, Chuck and I were talking about McGraw, and he said, I didn't know that McGraw was the corset, industry of the world or the U.S. or what? Well, when I was single and living in Norwich, I was working at the Norwich Pharmaceutical Company. And if you've had Pepto-Bismol or Norwich Aspirin, that was the company that I worked for. And at noon, we young ladies would get our paychecks and go up to the bank and cash them and then promptly go to the dress store and pay our bills. We looked great. We were poor by the next Thursday, but we sure did look good. Anyways, Carl's my husband. Carl was training to be a manager for W.T. Grant's store, and he was working in Norwich. And at noon, he would go out and crank out the awning, and he did that for the next half hour. He was in and out and in, because he was watching all the young ladies who were walking past the store. And I wasn't too sure whether I should even meet up with him, but I did. And so got acquainted with him, and he told me where he lived. He lived in McGraw. And he said, that's the place that holds the whole world together, or half of the world together. And I thought, gee, I wonder what he means by that. At our wedding reception, my mother's cousin said, where are you going to be living? And I said, McGraw. And he said, way over there? So you see, bad reputation in Norwich. Anyways, I'm so pleased that Chuck would come and talk with us. He's been in Cortland a few times, and so I was glad he had time to come tonight. And as I say, we're dealing with the debate on TV, so I think maybe that's why some of our people aren't here. So Chuck, thank you for coming.
Thank you. How you doing, gang? It's my pleasure to be over here. I got to tell you, that was quite a lead-in. That was quite a lead-in.
100 words or less.
And I'll tell you why. I speak all over the place. You have to excuse my voice. I have a cold. I am a DJ. I went to work this morning at 5 o'clock and did my morning show. And so I might cough and hack my way through this, but I was very anxious to get over here tonight. I speak all over the state all the time. I do this 40 times, 50 times a year, New York City and all over the place. And when I came tonight, I thought, yeah, I know Cortland. I speak in Cortland twice a year sometimes. I have family there. My last name is D'Imperio. My Uncle Bob, my Aunt Nancy lived there for 50 years. My cousin Danny's a famous drummer. He lives there. But I've never been to McGraw. And what I usually do when I talk about this book is I explain the way I write, research, and speak. I have 9 books out. All of them are about upstate New York. And they've been published by everybody from the State University of New York to Syracuse University. They've all been big sellers and they're all great. And people always say to me, how do you find these stories in these towns? And my wife always says, my husband is a scratch and sniff writer. He pulls into a town and he scratches and he sniffs and he doesn't leave until he finds the story. Having never been to McGraw, I looked it up today and I shared the story on my radio show this morning that I was going to be here. It's out of your range, so you wouldn't hear it. And the Corset City. I thought, how can that be? The Corset City, right? And I thought, and that's why we spoke, and I thought, that is just wonderful. And here's what happens. I do so much speaking and writing about upstate New York. A lot of times I speak, I get invited to come to tourism boards, travel advisory boards, chambers of commerce for small towns, and they say, we're hurting. You write a lot about these things. What can we do? And I always use the example of where I came from today, my home of Unadilla, New York. And I always use Unadilla as an example. Every town has a story to tell. Every town has a story to tell. Some of them you really have to scratch and sniff to find. Some of them put it right out in the front window for everybody to see. And I say, if you have a story, put it in the front window. Let people know. It doesn't have to be big. Let people know. There's a lot of people like me, historical society people, people who are now interested because of the internet and the History Channel. They're interested in finding out these stories. And Unadilla, New York, you've all know where Unadilla, New York is, right? You drive through Unadilla on Route 7 and you say, what a gorgeous little village. I'll bet nothing ever happened here. But something did happen there. And in my little village of Unadilla, they put it in the front window. Every street pole on Main Street in Unadilla has a banner that says, welcome to Unadilla, New York, the home of Boy Scout Troop Number 1.
Oh, my goodness.
It is the century troop. It isn't the longest, it isn't the first one. It's like, you know, we all have First Baptist Church. We can't all be first, right? But Unadilla, New York has the longest continuously chartered Boy Scout troop in America. And they have a wonderful little Boy Scout museum there. It tells the history of it back at the turn of the century. And it's wonderful. Now, I gotta tell you, if I wasn't from Unadilla and I'm driving along and I see that banner, I'm stopping. And I'm asking at the post office or I'm asking over at the hardware store, tell me about it. And I'm going to explore. So I tell all of these little towns and villages, put it out there. And I'm telling you today, put it out there. Welcome to McGraw, New York, the corset capital. Underneath that, a little quote that says, we kept half of the population together. I'm telling you, for the cost of $200 on a sign, people are going to stop and they're going to come to the Historical Society and they're going to say, what is going on here? That's what it takes. That's what it takes. The other thing I would suggest too, and I have told people, keep your eyes open when you drive, and I have told the story of the statue that the wonderful statue that you've shown here of John Jay and how you drive along. I remember the first time I saw it, my car stopped by itself. And I got out and I stood there. It's a little tough to stand there. It's kind of busy, you know, and I took pictures and everything. So that's what I do. Now, this book that I'm going to talk to you about tonight was really one of my fun ones. By the way, if you're interested, they're $25. I got some here. I'll be happy to sign them. They make a great gift. This book here, I have written about Famous graves in upstate New York. Who's buried all over the place? That was a fun one. The foods of upstate New York, called A Taste of Upstate New York. That's the bestseller. The unknown museums of upstate New York. 50 smaller museums in upstate New York. Everything from the Cheese Museum to the Kazoo Museum. They're all in upstate New York. Each book takes me a year to write. It gets published, and my phone rings off the wall. People want me to come and talk to them about. This one was fun. They said, what are we going to do for the next book? And I said, I have an idea. I feel like I've been everywhere, but that is dispelled because I'm somewhere tonight I've never been. So this book is called Upstate New York in 100 Words or Less. And the concept of that is, if you're like me, I cannot pass a historical marker. I just can't. I already took a photograph of the one out here in front of this building that you have out here. I don't even remember what it said, but I saw it and I'll read it later. And they're always in 100 words or less. So I thought, I'm going to go to 100 different communities and I'm going to describe them in 100 words or less, as if I was describing them in a historic marker, an historical marker. All right, so I did that. I will tell you this, in the back of the book, I flesh it out. And I tell you more things about each of the communities. How did I come up with these communities? Honest to God, I sat at my kitchen table with my wife and my 2 small children at the time, and I took out a New York State map, okay? I don't write about New York City, bless you, I don't write about New York City, so we blocked that off. And we literally did this. I handed the map to Abby. I wrote it down on a little piece of paper and we stuffed it in a bingo roller. I handed it to Joey. Bingo roller, my wife, me, and we went around until we had 200 communities stuffed into this thing. And I said, here's what we're going to do. My next book is going to be 100 of those. Rolled it around, took it out, wrote it down. Finally, I came up with a list of 100 communities, and that's this book. Some of the community, half of them I'd heard of. Well, half of them I'd been there. 25% I'd heard of. 25% I'd never heard of. And those are really the best stories. And then off I went to scratch and sniff my way to this book called Upstate New York, 100 Words or Less. And you can see in the cover they picked some of these here: Cazenovia, Westfield, Fly Creek, Hurley, Oneonta, Penn Yan, Woodstock, New York. Give you a little bit of an idea. So I'm going to tell you a few of my favorite stories if you've heard of these towns, just raise your hand so I know that you've been there. If not, I'm just going to pick a few, and I'll tell you some of the stories I found there. How about this one? This one's in Ontario, New York. Who has ever heard of or been to Phelps? Ontario. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, Phelps, New York. Cute little town. They're all cute little towns. Cute little town. But how interesting is it when you come into Phelps and it doesn't say, welcome to the Corset City, we kept half the world together. It says, welcome to Phelps, the sauerkraut capital of the world. Right? No, not anymore, but it was. It was. And they've got it on the front window. And I stopped, and I talked, and I visited, I made friends with people. It was a wonderful thing. And they have a sauerkraut festival. Of course they do. And how fun. They have cabbage bowling on Main Street. They have a king kraut and a queen kraut at the dance that night in the village square. They have, at the end of the night, they make a sauerkraut cake. I agree. They make a sauerkraut cake and they sell the slices for $1 each, and it goes to the local fire department. But people go. I gotta tell you, if you're from New York City, if you live in Manhattan and you're a high-powered attorney and your wife is in advertising and you live in a high-pressure, going to the Sauerkraut Festival in Phelps sounds like a nice little way to relax over a weekend. And people go there. So Phelps is in the book. But you can't leave Phelps without doing one thing. You'll find it in the book. You have to go and see the world's only 2-story brick outhouse. And believe it or not, it is at the Phelps Historical Society. It's an old mansion right on Main Street, and in the back, there's a picture, in the back is a tower, and the man who owned the home originally put a little walkway with a 2-holer up and a 2-holer down. And it's still there. And I gotta tell you, that's the most photographed thing in Phelps. It really is. People love that. The only brick outhouse in America. Here's one for you. How about Whitehall? Whitehall, New York. Whitehall, New York. All right, here's where Whitehall is. Obviously, this is in a nutshell. Go get on the Northway out of Albany, go up to Glens Falls, hang a right, Fort Anne, Fort Edward, work your way into Vermont, kind of the back door into Vermont. You drive in. Welcome to Whitehall, New York, the birthplace of the United States Navy. What? Where's the water? Now, if I was in my Final Jeopardy question and it said, where's the birthplace of the U.S. Navy, I'd put Annapolis. That sounds like a good guess, but it's Whitehall, New York. Why is it Whitehall, New York? Not going to get into it really deep, but Whitehall, New York is on a little tiny canal that connects the Hudson River to Lake Champlain. And during the Revolutionary War, Benedict Arnold, when he was still a good guy, raised a ship there, went up into the Valcour Islands, engaged the British Navy, lost, but it's considered the first U.S. naval engagement, thereby making it the birthplace. And they have a museum there that tells the story. So that's why I went there. But that's not why Whitehall ended in the book. I got done, and all day as I'm walking, a cute little town, all day as I'm walking around, I was like, what is that? I talked to somebody, I said, what is that? There is Whitehall, tiny, little bridge over the canal, and a mountain. And there on the mountain is a mansion that hangs off the mountain. You cannot miss it. So I said to my wife, let's go check it out. So we went over, we went up and up and up and up and up, and there's a little sign that says Skene, S-K-E-N-E, Skene Manor. And I come up, and you look down here, and there's the beautiful village, and there's the canal, and there's the lake, and it's gorgeous. And here is this 3-story tall Victorian mansion, just as big and beautiful as could. No cars. My wife and I get out, and we're looking, and I'm taking pictures. All of a sudden I hear bang, bang, bang. And I think, I look, the back door is open and is banging, open and close. And I said, honey, look, the door is open. And she said, I'll meet you in the car. So I went in. Hello? Hello? Beautiful, beautiful. The dining room is set up with candelabra and linen tablecloths and fine china and silverware. Hello? Bingo, this lady jumps right in front of me. Hi, can I help you? It scared the heck out of me. I said, what's going on here? And she said, well, this is Skene Manor, and we're setting up for a wedding reception. I said, what's the story of Skene Manor? I was there 2 hours. And that's what made it into the book. you can buy the book and hear the story. It is incredible, and you cannot miss it. If you ever backdoor your way into Vermont, you will have to stop at Ski Manor. It is quite a story for sure.
Did your wife get out of the car?
She had a nice nap. She had a very, very nice nap. Lockport, New York, who's been there? Lockport. Everybody's been to Lockport, New York, you know. And when I went there, the Flight of Five is a remarkable thing. Lockport, New York is on the Erie Canal. When they were building the Erie Canal, they had a lot of trouble all the way, but nothing like they found in Lockport. When they hit Lockport, there's an 80-foot wall of limestone. They didn't know how to do it. They stopped. They actually sent people to England where they'd been building canals and said, come back with an answer. They came back with an answer and they said, there's nothing we can do except go over it. So we all know what a lock is. You go in, the water fills up, the boat goes on, right? We all know what a lock is. They built 5 on top of each other. It's called,
My goodness.
it's called the 5 stair steps or the Flight of 5. It's still there. The doors were made of wood, so the doors are gone. Today there's a modern lock next to it, and of course the Erie Canal is only used for passengers and tourists and tours and stuff. And the boat goes in there and lifts them way up. Now, they didn't have that in those days. They built 5 right on top of each other to get you up and over 80 feet. It's remarkable. When you look at it, it's still there. And you think, no electricity, no computers. There wasn't one civil engineer in America when they built the Erie Canal. It was done by 5,000 Italians and 5,000 Irishmen with pickaxes. And it's perfectly plumb. It's exact as if anybody would build it today. And so I called in advance and I told the park guy, I said, I'm coming out, can you walk around with me? He said, yeah, sure. So he's pointing it to me. And he said, let me show you down here. So we're walking down along the canal and we go by a door. It's a hill, large hill right here. Where he's talking about the canal and the boat size, and there's the. And I said, "What is that door?" And he said, "Do you want to go in?" I said, "Yeah." My wife's napping in the car. I'll go in. So we went in. It was amazing. It was amazing. He takes out his key, unlocks it. Pushed this old door open. We stepped in. He took out his park ranger flashlight, clicked it on, and we're inside the hill. And we're walking along, and he said, this is where all the excavation for the locks was put. This was the new hill. We're walking along inside. You could see, he said, there were miners working in here, laborers working here by the hundreds every day. And I said, man, it's hot in here. He said, imagine what it must have been. He's got the flashlight going. He said, look over there. And he shined, and there is a door about this wide and about this high. I said, what is that? He said, that's the top of the first lock, where they would walk along. I said, what's that? Same thing. He said, that's door number 2. And that's the way it went. He's shining the light around, telling me the story. I said, what is that? And you look on top, and there is still a pickaxe hanging from the ceiling. I said, what is that? He said, we don't know, but the rumor has it that one of the laborers went crazy in here, literally threw the pickaxe into the ceiling, walked out, and it's still there. I said, that must have been the Irishman. One Italian would leave a pickaxe behind, I'll tell you that. We continued walking along. I said, what is that? And there on the side of the wall is a big black smudge. He said, that's where some TNT went off when it shouldn't have. 18 people died there. We come around the corner with his flashlight, and there's a river in the mountain. And we get in a boat, just like at Howe Caverns. And he's pulling along, he's telling me stories. We get to the end, we hop off, he puts the rowboat aside, we go up a couple of stairs, takes his key out, opens the door, we both step out, and we're up on Main Street. Main Street. And we got in down here. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So these are some of the things I share with people, and I'll tell you, this book has been out a couple of years now, and I go back and I revisit. I made friends with all these people that I talk, and I'm always going through Lockport, and I'll go down there and say, oh my God, we have so many people come in and say they read it in your book. So then now there's organized tours through there and everything. It's just really remarkable. I'm so happy to be able to do that. Let's see, I think probably Bernie Sanders is about ready to talk, so I'll continue. How about Naples, New York? Yeah, all over the place. So I show up in Naples. Beautiful. No question how it got its name, right? Beautiful rolling hills, the lake, the vineyards. That is great. So I go there, nobody there. It's a quiet day. There's Tuesday at noon. And I walk around and I'm thinking, okay, it's Naples. Scratch, 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 scratch. So I go into the hardware store. I said, man, my name is Chuck DiImperio. I said, I'm writing a book. I want to include Naples. What's your story here? He said, well, son, our story is the grape. He said, we're pretty proud of our grapes here in Naples. And I said, well, I'm sure you are, but I'm going to need a little bit more. Scratch, scratch, scratch. He says, no, you don't get it. We're very proud of our grapes in Naples. He could see a puzzled look on my face. He said, all right, come here, come here. So he took me and we went out the back door. We stepped out on the sidewalk and he said, take a look at that. And there it is. Something you will never see anywhere else in New York State. The fire hydrants in Naples are painted purple in honor of their grapes. I said, you really are proud of your grapes, aren't you, sir? So I said, this is really great. Now I got the start of a story. He said, well, you know, he says, you can't leave unless you have a slice of grape pie. And I said, well, I've never heard of that, but I'm game. He said, here's what you do. You go on out 1 mile down this road from where we're standing. It's Monica's Pie Shop. He said, she's the queen of the grape pie. He said, you go on out there and ask her for some grape pie. And I said, okay. So I drive out there and there's Monica's out there, all purple, cute little store, all purple, purple sign, purple everything. I walk in, nobody there, nice little shop. Hello, hello. Finally I hear boom, 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 somebody coming up the stairs. And around the corner comes a woman dressed in baker's white with a hairnet on, flower on her face. She said, can I help you? I said, you're Monica probably, right? And she said, yes, I am. And I told her the story. She said, sure, but I'm baking, so let's go downstairs and talk. So I went downstairs, and she's baking pies. And there's pies all along the wall, on racks and everything else. And I said, you're the queen of the grape pie, huh? And she said, well, that's what the New York Times called me. I said, really? She said, what happened was they had sold, she and her husband had sold grapes. And a big wine area out there. And they grew Concord grapes. And all of a sudden, white grapes were all the rage, and everybody wanted white wine, and she was stuck with all of her blue grapes. So they didn't know what to do with it. So her mother, who was in her 90s and was in the cellar that day I was there, crimping crust, Grandma said, why don't you take all those darn blue grapes and make them into grape pie and put them out on a wagon in the front yard, $1 each. So she did. She went out, she came back, and the grandmother said, aren't you going to put any out there? She said, well, yeah, I just filled it. They're gone. They're gone. The can's filled with $1 bills. So she said, I'll make some more. And pretty soon she got famous for her pies. And then came a pie shop. And then came people knowing about her from other villages and things like that. Now other people too make grape pie, and it is the signature dish of Naples, New York, is the grape pie. So before we left, she said, oh, I can't wait to be in the book. That's great, Chuck. And she said, would you like a slice of grape pie? I said, you know, I've never had one. I said, sure. So she cut me off a big slice of grape pie and she gave it to me and I ate it. And I gotta tell you, it was awful. It really was. It really was. I know that it's an acquired taste. I know it. I can see some of the faces of people in here who've had it and love it. It was awful. And I'm swallowing it whole and, you know, I said, this is great. She said, you like it? I said, this is fantastic. She said, here's 3 to take home to your family, right? So she gave me 3 pies to take home to the family, right? And I thanked her and she was lovely. She was the most lovely woman. And as I left, she said, I told her, I said, where's the post office? Because I had something I needed to mail. I said, just, where's the box? She said, we're going to the post office in about 10 minutes. Just leave it here, I'll take it. I said, no, I don't want you to go out of the way. She said, it's not out of the way. Those 500 pies are being mailed tonight, and we'll take your letters down with us. She sells 10,000 pies over the mail.
Oh my word.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And so I came out and I had my picture taken right in front of Monica's pie shop because I wanted to show you. You can really see some grape pie on my shirt, actually, right up around the corner there. So, but that's just another one. I'll just tell you a couple more. But you see what I'm talking about?
How can she send those pies through the mail? And I mean, what do they look like when they get there?
Oh, she's got it all set with dry ice. She's got the whole thing.
Really?
Oh God, yes. Wow. FedEx, UPS, US Mail.
Wow.
This is how I do it when I go into towns. If I were writing this book next year, the Corset City, we held half the world together, would be a chapter in here. I love that. I love that. So anyway, how about Canisteo? 1, anybody else? 2, 3? I go to Canisteo, New York. It's way out past the Finger Lakes, western New York. And again, nobody around. Dead of summer, a Wednesday. I get there, it's a long way. I'm gonna find a store here. And of course, when I pull into towns like that, I kind of curse my kids for having their finger landed on a town like that. I have to work so hard to find the story, but I don't see anybody, nobody. I'm riding around, I don't see any historical, I don't see anything. Finally, I go by the elementary school, Greenwood Elementary School in Canisteo, New York. And I hear the lawnmower. And there's the guy from the school district mowing the front yard. He's got the big ear things on, so. He finally stops. He turns to the lawnmower. Can I help you, boy? I said, yeah, I'm a writer, and I need to know a story from Canisteo. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, I told him a little bit. He says, I got one for you. I said, okay, can you tell me? He says, I've got to finish this lawn, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to go down this road you're on for a mile, turn around, and come right back to this school. And when you turn around, you will see the sign. That is the story I'm going to tell you. Okay. So he finishes I go down, I turn around, I come back, and there's the sign. Welcome to Canisteo, New York, the home of the world's largest living sign. Okay, I'm game. So I pull back up, and out he comes. And I said, okay, I'm game. What's the world's largest living sign? He said, well, it was a natural phenomenon that we created in Canisteo many, many decades ago. He said, we're pretty proud of it. I said, well, okay, I want to see the world's largest living sign. And he said, there it is. And he pointed to the hill behind the school. And there, on the hill behind the school, is the word Canisteo, spelled out in 130 spruce trees. Just as clear as you could imagine. And I said, that is unbelievable. He said, yeah, it was done, it's in the book here, he said it was done like in the 1930s, a science class, the group did it, they planted the saplings, other classes tended it over the years. He said, and then in the 1940s, Robert Ripley, of Ripley's Believe It or Not, heard about it, came to Canisteo, and wrote it in his, Ripley's Believe It or Not column, and dubbed it the world's largest living sign. And it's there. Now, it's not real easy to see in a grainy photograph, but you're welcome to look at this afterwards, and once you find it on that mountain, it clearly says Canisteo in spruce trees. It's, again though, welcome to McGraw, the corset city. We held half the world together. They have it there, the world's largest living sign, right? Right? These people have put those things out there, and there's certain people, I get it if people don't want to do that. My hometown is Sydney, New York. You ever heard of Sydney, New York? That's my hometown. I've been fighting with them for years to put something on a sign that they say, no, no, no. Sydney is going through a downturn, let's put it politely. But you know what? In 1950, we had a defense plant in Sydney called Scintilla, right? There was thousands. There were businesses on Main Street never closed. They were open 20. My father was a grocer, never closed. They had thousands. They had trains bringing employees in. They had people coming in from as far away as Binghamton, 70 miles away, to work at the Scintilla, right? And then after the war, they made magnetos for Charles Lindbergh's Spirit of St. Louis. They made magnetos for the war machine and all of that. World War II ends and all of the defense plants empty out. But Sydney's factory had enough orders that they were able to stay alive, and here comes the Korean War, and we need a defense plant. Who's open? Sydney's open. So Sydney was back, and Saturday Evening Post came to Sydney and did a cover story on my hometown, calling Sydney the village we can't do without. And there's pictures of my father's grocery store, and the guys bowling, and the factory, and all the workers, and all of that. And I tell the Sydney Chamber of Commerce, put that sign out on Route 7. Welcome to Sydney, New York, the village we can't do without. Of course, people are going to drive in and say, what? You then put a historic marker up and explain why. Explain why. I'll tell you one more story, and I'll let you guys go. I think it's probably Kamala Harris. Right about now yet? I have to be honest with you. Whenever I talk about this book, I have 9 books, so I'm always talking about different ones. I haven't talked about this one in a while. Whenever I talk about this book, let me just pull this page up right here. When I visited this place, I was so moved that I told them, whenever I talk about this book, I will always talk about you. Okay? So, let me set it up for you. It's I think it was October of 1942. Things are really starting to look bad for U.S. involvement, World War II, going over there and all that. And we weren't ready. So the War Department made a decision that we needed to get up to snuff, and we needed to get up to snuff fast. So they were looking for a training camp where hundreds of thousands of soldiers could be trained fast and sent out. They needed all these ingredients, logistics, locations, transportation, and all of that. And they found the place in Orangeburg, New York. And Orangeburg, New York was like a lot of little tiny towns in upstate New York. It had 115 families. It had 2 churches, a grocery store, a bar, gas station. a school. And one night, as the good people of Orangeburg were going to sleep, many of them heard that on their front door. They flicked on the lights and they went down. They opened it up, and there's 3 guys with military uniforms on. They say, "We're very sorry to disturb you at this hour of the night. Here's a pamphlet. You need to be at the village hall tomorrow at noon." Okay. And this went all throughout the village. They went to the meeting the next day, and the War Department stood up and said, "Unfortunately, the War Department needs Orangeburg, so we are buying every property. Every church, every home, every school, every business. Here's our lawyers to make the deals with you. Here's the bankers to make the financing with you. This has to be completed within 2 weeks, and you'll have to move." And of course, they're stunned. Imagine, here, right? They're stunned, but there's nothing they could do. They were paid their money, they moved out. Now, I have to tell you, when I tell this story in a certain area of the state, for example, in the Catskills, they all sit there and shake their heads because that's what happened when the reservoirs for New York City came in. And those villages are all underneath water now. So they move, and the military comes in and levels Orangeburg, levels it. And in its place, they build Camp Shanks. Camp Shanks ends up becoming the largest embarkation camp and training camp that the U.S. military has ever had. 1.2 million soldiers trained in Orangeburg at Camp Shanks, with 1,000 Quonset huts and artillery ranges. You can only imagine it. When the training was done, they marched 7 miles through the woods to Piermont, New York, which is just south of the Tappan Zee Bridge, to Piermont, New York, where long piers were built out into the Hudson, and the giant troop ships were parked there. And the soldiers stepped on those ships, went down around the Statue of Liberty and on to Europe. The name of the camp is known as Last Stop USA, for obvious reasons. That was the last thing a lot of soldiers saw. 60% of the soldiers that landed at D-Day had come from Orangeburg. I'd heard this story, and I knew there was a museum there, and I wanted to put this in my book. So I go to Orangeburg, New York. Orangeburg, New York now is a mess. I mean, the city's moved up into there now, as you can imagine, right up there by the Tappan Zee Bridge on the west side. Highways and freeways and strip malls and all this stuff. And I couldn't find it, so I go to the post office. I say, "Sir, I'm looking for the museum to Camp Shanks, Last Stop USA." He said, "Oh, yeah, I think I know where that is." He says, "Go down here, 3 lights and make a right. It's the old abandoned school. I think there's something in back." I said, "Okay." So I go down, I go in the back, and there it is. Where there once was 1,000 Quonset huts and 1,000,000 men, now there's 1 Quonset hut left. And it is the Camp Shanks Last Stop USA Museum. And I took a picture of me in front of it, only so you could see the size of the building. And this would have been a place that would have housed 40 soldiers at a time, with living quarters, cooking quarters, bathroom quarters, all that in there, all right? And I came around the corner and I prayed it would be open because I didn't know if I was going to get back, and I wanted it in. It did say open. The American flag was flying. So I went in. I have to tell you, I usually am a guy that knows what to do in any particular kind of a social situation. But something happened here, I didn't know what to do. I opened the door and I stepped in. And right at the entranceway is a table with 3 men. And their American Legion hats and their pins on, and they're sound asleep.
Sound asleep.
And I looked down at them, and they're clearly in their upper 80s or early 90s, and they're just sawing some serious wood. I mean, they're... I thought, if I make a noise, one of them's going to die. That's exactly what I thought. That's exactly what I thought. So you know what I did? I quietly backed out and I gently closed the door. And then I knocked on the door and I went in and they're like, welcome to Camp Shanks. Welcome to Camp Shanks. How may I help you? It was funny. Nice guys, two Battle of the Bulge and a D-Day. And they told me about it. It's an amazing place. It's small, it's not this big. And it's restored, if you will, as it was during the days of its training. There's the bunks, there's the latrine area, the indoor toilet, the wood stove, you know, just as it was, except one wall is all photographs. And so one of the gentlemen got up and came over, and he said, now this here is what the village looked like. And then here, he told me the whole story. And I said, this is fantastic. I said, who comes here? And he said, nobody. Nobody comes here. I said, well, wait a minute. What about the school kids? This would be perfect for a school trip. He said, well, you know, he said, those budgets, and they don't do that much anymore. He said, we did do it. He said, but all they wanted to see was the video. And I said, what video? He said, well, right back here. So we go in the back. There's a video monitor, and he hits the button. And it's great. You know what time-lapse photography is, where they take something that was filmed over an hour and shrink it down to 3 minutes, and everybody's running like crazy all over? It's the birth and death of Orangeburg. There's the village, the people, the things, the military, the smoke, the dust, the bulldozers, the flatness, the Quonset huts, the army, the marching, the leaving. All right there. He said they love that. But they didn't want to hear our stories. They didn't want to hear our stories. So when we got all done, I thanked the guy, and I said, gentlemen, I said, it is my honor to be in your presence. And I said, if there's anything I can do to get people to come to this place, I will do it. And the one guy who hadn't spoken yet, he said, well, Chuck, he said, we don't know how much longer we're going to be here. But we tell you this, when we go, somebody's coming. So we'll be here. He said, so just tell our story. And I said, wherever I go on this book, I always close with the story of Last Stop USA. And I gave them each a hug. I gave them each a salute. I closed the door, and as I walked to my car, you know what I heard? Thank you. Anybody has any questions or any comments, fire away, please. Give me a comment, give me a question.
So
In the back. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, go ahead.
You need to go up to Homer, the town of Homer, or the village of Homer right now. They're going through this. They have signs that by the village that are getting old, and the signs say Homer, New York, home of David Harum.
I see it every time.
Yeah, well.
David Harum and the Cardiff Giant. Yeah.
Right, but there's a big controversial discussion going on in the town of Homer because they're going to put up new signs.
Yeah.
And there's they've become fractured. There's one group that's totally against putting the David Harum thing back on the signs, and then there's another group that says, no, this.
I hear you, man. I hear you. My advice to them, and I see that, I've seen that sign 100 times. And finally I had to go and Google who David Harum was.
Fictional.
Beg your pardon?
Fictional.
But yeah, but I mean, you can find his story, the story of David Harum. And it's one thing to say the home of David Harum under there, but you need more. You just can't put the home of Joe Smith. You can't do that. That means nothing. But he had a nickname. I can't remember what his nickname was. The grand something. He's from there. I mean, the story was written from there. I mean, that's part of Homer's DNA. So I can understand that. Yeah. But just putting the name on there is a waste. In my opinion, it is a waste. Now, I noticed coming up yesterday, I had to go up to Hamilton. Welcome to Hamilton, New York, and home. Just yesterday, I noticed a new little sign swinging underneath the welcome to, and it says, home of, and a man's name, the father of the internet. Right? That will get me to stop. But if they had just got his name, Pauli Graditsky, the father of the internet, I'm stopping and finding out more about that. So I understand what they're going through. I do. Any other comment or question?
Should be the home of Andy Kirk.
Huh? Andy Kirk, yeah.
What is nice is the Pomeroy Foundation in Syracuse.
Oh, they're wonderful.
Oh my gosh.
They are wonderful. They are responsible for so many wonderful historical
It's
marks.
helped
They're great.
historians a lot.
They're great. Anybody else got another comment or question?
Your program has been the most interesting thing I've heard in a long, long time. It's very interesting.
Wow, you're coming home with me tonight.
It's wonderful. I gotta buy your book.
Thank you. Well, I would encourage this.
It's because it's over around Chenango County.
No, it's not. It's because Jerry Yang, I think, is speaking now, and nobody wants to see him. No, let me just tell you this. Really, if you ever need a speaker next year, I've got 9 books. I can do this 9 times. And I will tell you this. I've just remembered it. My new book comes out November 15th. It's my 10th book, 9th book, I'm not sure. Syracuse University is publishing it. It was so much fun to write. It's called Open House, 35 famous upstate New York homes that are open to the public. And the 1819 house in Cortland is one of the chapters.
1890 now.
What's that?
1890.
Yeah, the Wickwire mansion. And I spent the whole afternoon there with Jared, who was running it over there. I never saw anything like it. I said, this is going to be great. You're going to be a chapter. He flipped about it, And it is a stunning place to see.
Yeah.
But I saw 35 of them.
Have you been to the Ben Conger Inn in Groton?
Say it again, please.
The Ben Conger Inn in Groton?
No, I'm trying to think of what would be close to you. There's an Octagon House in Camillus that's in there. The Cortland House is in there. Hyde Hall in Cooperstown is in there. And it ranges from the splendor of the Wickwire mansion all the way down to the log cabin that John Burroughs lived in the Catskills on a back mountain road. And he's buried there too. It's a great book. I had so much fun. I learned so much. There was a lot of goosebumps in those houses. It's just not a house. Somebody lived there. And when you go into a house in Fayetteville, New York, that was owned by Matilda Joslyn Gage, one of the 3 great women of the women's rights movement. Everybody knows Susan B. Anthony, and everybody knows Elizabeth Cady Stanton. That third one is a tricky one to come up with. Matilda Joslyn Gage, and her home is in there. And I went out there, and the woman told me, this is where Matilda Gage wrote the declarations for the women's rights movement, setting it up. And I said, will Susan B. Anthony ever come here? She said, oh yeah, come with me. She took me upstairs. We went into a room, bed. She said, we call this Susan's room, because when she stayed here, this is where she slept. And I said, it gives me goosebumps. She said, look at this. She turned the light on, and there's a window. 8-pane window. And on her last visit there, Susan B. Anthony signed her name on the window with her diamond ring. Susan B. Anthony and the date. Right? Goosebumps? Huh? Hey, listen, we got the big stuff. Joe Biden's almost coming up, so I'll let... Yes, ma'am.
Are your books in the libraries?
I will tell you this, that 90% of my books are sold on Amazon. I mean, you just can go on Amazon, order it, and it'll be in there in 3 days. This book here is a little bit more difficult to find. That's why I always like to take some when I go out. All the other books, I mean, I get the statement at the end of the year, and Amazon is always 90% of the sales. Because you can order it there and send it as a gift, too. It makes it easy.
So is this your hobby?
I'm a radio broadcaster, 31 years. I'm in my 31st year doing morning radio in Oneonta. I worked this morning from 5. I got off the air at noon.
From 5 to noon?
From 5 to noon. I've been doing a show on WDOS in Oneonta since 1989. So,
Did you go to school there? Where did?
well, I was born in Sydney, went to college in Albany, lived for many years in the West Coast, came back here in the mid-'80s, had my family here, got into radio in '89,
And you've been writing?
and I do. I love to travel, I love to write, and this is my favorite thing, is the speaking. That's what I like. In fact, I'm doing what's that?
You do it well.
Oh, well, this is all part of radio too. It's telling the story, you know. People say when I go to do a speaking engagement, okay, we'll get you the screens, we'll get you the slide projector. I don't want anything. I don't need anything. Just give me
The
a
real
microphone.
deal.
Give me a microphone. I'll paint my own pictures. Yes, ma'am.
Do you go to schools and tell children?
I have gone to schools and I've told the stories to children. It's a little deep for them. I do speak at colleges, and they get it. In fact, I do a guest lecture series at State University of New York. Sir, in the back?
Jeff, what name do you apply to Univille as to...
Well, Unadilla has been known as the Village Beautiful forever. So it says, welcome to Unadilla, the Village Beautiful, home of Boy Scout Troop Number 1. That is the welcoming signs on either end of town. Yes, sir, in the back.
Does that radio station stream over the internet?
It does not. No, I know everybody asks that. It does not. No. Last thing, I'll leave you, one more second. People always ask me, what's upstate New York? I get that question, I address it in the front of every one of my books. What's upstate New York? Well, to me, I don't write about the city. So for my sanity, I just use the Tappan Zee Bridge and everything. That's the way I look at it. People say, well, you know, I don't know about that. And I said, look, I live in Oneonta. There's 2 colleges. There's 8,000 students. 6,500 of them are from New York City. If you ask them where they're from, they say downstate. So if that's downstate, we're upstate. And I'll tell you, people will say, you know, oh yeah, we're from upstate, up in Westchester.
Yeah.
They never been to McGraw. Thanks everybody, I'll let you go.